epidemiologist, Dr. Justin Xavier Moore. Paceline is a nonprofit fundraising organization where 100% of the fundraising dollars are used for research towards ending cancer. We created the Paceline podcast to better disseminate information regarding how the funds are being utilized by having in-depth conversations with currently funded Paceline awardees. Today, we have a really good one for you. We have two very esteemed guests joining us to share more about Paceline and their work. To my right, we have the indelible Mr. Dag Grantham. He is president and CEO of Eden Innovations and founder and chairman of Paceline Ride. To my left, we have the amazing Dr. Malcolm Bevel, who is an assistant professor within the Cancer Prevention, Control, and Population Health Program within the Department of Medicine at the Georgia Cancer Center of Augusta University. Today, Dr. Malcolm Bevel will be sharing his work on racial disparities in food deserts, food swamps, and multiple cancer outcomes, a mixed methods analysis. Now, I know that's a mouthful and it's a lot, but we have a very charming and intelligent epidemiologist here that's going to talk about his work, and we'll get into it. We have a ton to discuss today, so let's get deeper into it. Let's go ahead and start off with Dr. Bevel. Could you just tell us where you're from and what do you do?
All right. Thank you for the welcome. Thank you, Paceline, for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Malcolm Bevel. I'm originally from Iowa, but I've been in the South since 2004. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Biology, pre-med focus from Prairie View A&M University, so it's HBCU near Houston, Texas. Then I received my Master's of Science in Public Health from Meharry Medical College, HBCU out of Nashville, Tennessee, with a focus on chronic disease epidemiology and cancer epidemiology, health disparities in underserved communities such as the African American community. I worked for 2 years at Vanderbilt, and then I decided to go get my PhD at the University of South Carolina, so just right up the street here from Augusta, Georgia. I received my PhD 2020, May 2020, so in the midst of the pandemic, which is a very interesting time. But successfully defended my dissertation where I was looking at multiple associations from the Sisters trial that we worked on there. And so graduated May 2020, PhD in epidemiology, and I've done two postdocs, one at the Duke University School of Medicine, and then another one, a short stint before coming to work here at UNC School of Medicine. And that's where I really picked up the work and my interest regarding social determinants of health and how that plays a role in cancer disparities in the United States, specifically food deserts, food swamps, walkability in neighborhoods, racial residential segregation, and how those play a role in health disparities in this country.
Yes, sir. Wow. That is a lot of great training. This man has his education, y'all. Two postdocs. That's wonderful. And you were just mentioning something about the social determinants of health. For our viewers who may not be familiar with that, what it consists of is looking at how a lot of different factors within the social context or their environment may influence someone's long-term health, right?
Correct. As we know, biology and genetics play a large role in disease in of itself, or outcomes, if you will. But the environment also plays a role. So these social determinants that we speak of also play a huge role into it. So it's a multifaceted aspect that we talk about in epidemiology, and things that we should focus on more, especially as we know what's going on lately in the United States.
Okay, we're going to get deeper into this discussion because your work carries a lot of the conversation regarding some of the social determinants of health and cancer outcomes, right? So let's go ahead and get a little bit more about our president here. Let's talk to Dag. So you're the founder of Paceline. How did this organization come about, and why was this cause so dear to your heart?
So thank you, Justin. It's great to be here with you this morning and talk a little bit more about Paceline and be with Dr. Bevel and understand more of what he's doing with the Paceline funds. And it's exciting times for all of us after, starting off year 4. So how did we get to year 1? I'm originally from Augusta, Georgia, born and raised here, and left when I was about 18 years old to go off to college. It took me 28 years to get back. Wow. And when I came back, it was from up in Columbus, Ohio area.
Okay.
And about right about the time I had moved there in 2008, 2009, an organization stood up. It was called Pelotonia, and they raised money for the James Cancer Research Center at Ohio State University. And so at the time I was a runner. It was a cycling event as well. Didn't really participate. About the time I moved back here, thought, hey, we'll jump on a bike and go back up there and see our friends that we had left behind,
right,
and do this event. Had volunteered, but never really fully engaged in it. Decided to do the full 100, the longest route they had on the day one. And you can imagine at mile 75, 80, somewhere in there, you've gone through multiple towns, you've had the cheering crowds, and now you got to find that drive to get to the end. And we're in the middle of just the middle of the country, cornfields everywhere. And off in the distance, you see this tent by the side of the road. And I get chills telling the story right now. And as you get closer, there's a man standing there, and he's holding a sign, and it simply says, "Thank you for saving my wife."
Wow.
And that emotional experience was so powerful. I thought, how can we get more people to experience this? How can we get people to understand the impact they can have on others' lives, people they've never met, replicate this event? To kind of speed the story along, connected with the Pelotonia leadership and the board, talked to them about what we wanted to do down here in Georgia. They did not see us as a threat for funding. They saw us as an asset for helping to cure cancer faster from another region. And they provide us a lot of great insight. Partnered up with Ian Mercier, the leader of the Medical College of Georgia Foundation, and then formed Paceline. And had our first event in 2019, and we've been going strong ever since. So it was, like I said, so many people come to a position of starting an organization such as this from a traumatic interaction or medical thing in their own family, and unfortunately have not had to suffer that directly, but it was more that emotional impact. How can people get engaged and help others? And so we started Paceline down here.
Wow. Thank you, Dag. And just to kind of keep along that same track, I want to take a moment now to thank our participants and our teams that participated last year in Paceline. And just for all of those who are watching, Paceline last year, we raised over $330,000. And I just wanted to take a moment to just give recognition to 4 of the top fundraising teams. Last year, our number 1 fundraising team was Ivy Homes. Our number 2 fundraising team was One Vogel. Our number 3 fundraising team was Cranston, and our number 4 fundraising team was HNTB. Again, none of this can be done without the support of the community, without us doing this together. Paceline, the entire objective is to work towards ending cancer. So that's why we're here with a great researcher today and the founder of this organization, because we really, really, really want to hone in on what this message is about and disseminate this information and some of the great work that those dollars are being able to contribute to. So again, let's go ahead and pivot back to Dr. Bevel here and talk more about your work at the Cancer Center. So how did you come to be a researcher? And I actually played a role in this, right?
Right, yes, you did.
How did you come to be a researcher at the Georgia Cancer Center? Tell us a little bit more about your background outside of what you discussed already. So how did you become to be a researcher at the Georgia Cancer Center?
So as you're well aware of, Justin, we worked together when I was at Duke in my postdoc, and we worked on a paper that we did get published about allostatic load and disparities associated with that in the United States within the last 10 years. So it was an analysis that we did using BRFSS data, or excuse me, NHANES data. And we looked at a condition where basically looking at cumulative stress in the human body and components of that make up allostatic load, and looked at racial differences, racial and gender differences with that. And we found some pretty revolutionary and novel results, including how pronounced it was among African American and Latino women.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did that work, and then we've been in communication ever since. We've been working together since basically 2020. And you told me about great opportunities at the Georgia Cancer Center at CPCPH, how you all do what we call community-based participatory research approaches, where there is equal and equitable footing amongst researchers like ourselves and community members, stakeholders, pastors, you name it, basically the people.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's equal footing in that basically what they say goes. And that's the driver in terms of how we do our research, and because we believe that that's one of the best ways to achieve equity and justice when it comes to public health and epidemiology. So you sold a good sell, and I am glad to be here. So I interviewed with you all, and clearly the interviews were a success because I'm here, and the time here is just taken off. I've been here since December. My family and I have been here since December, and I've received not just one grant from Paceline, but I've received 2 grants. And so we could talk about that more in depth, but yeah, so it's just taken off. It's definitely a blessing.
Yeah, and you were just mentioning work regarding community-based participatory research, and a big part of CBPR is what we call meeting people where they are.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
A lot of these disparities that we do see in certain cancer outcomes and other outcomes across the different spectrum can be mitigated in certain populations if the barriers in terms of access to care were resolved or mitigated.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what a lot of the work that you do and I do involves, right? We're meeting people where they are, disseminating health information and knowledge, trying to pair and couple people with appropriate screening and care. We have a lot of issues in regards to public health and epidemiology and medicine, and we have a lot of communities that don't necessarily trust health organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And this is warranted due to a lot of things that have historically happened.
Yep.
So again, the work that you do, we're going to get more in depth with the work that you have that's funded here, is very, very important and significant because it's working on mitigating and trying to resolve a lot of these issues by working and partnering with communities to have more of a sustainable approach, right?
Absolutely.
So I love the work that you're doing. And if we could just take time, could we go ahead and explain what your current project is and what you're trying to find and what you're trying to create?
Got you. So, I'll start actually with the project that I started with, one of the intramural grants that I received from our department, where I was doing focus groups. We're basically just having conversations with local African-American community leaders such as pastors and gardeners and farmers, looking at the feasibility and acceptability of building and maintaining community gardens in the African American community here. So literally we were just having conversations with people using the CBPR approach. So again, meeting them where they are, because one of those barriers that you alluded to, transportation. A lot of people, especially in the African American community, may not have cars or adequate transportation to meet us here at the Georgia Cancer Center. That's no problem. Mm-hmm. We'll come to you. We'll come to you and have this conversation. Again, it's about equity and inclusion. So that's what we're going to do. So we just basically had conversations about their feelings, attitudes, and beliefs regarding community gardening in general, some of the things that are lacking in the Augusta and the CSRA, and largely what we found thus far with some of the focus groups, which we took a pause on to matriculate into the Paceline grant, were that there's been removal of at least 5 grocery stores within the last 5 to 7 years here in just the Augusta region alone. So we're talking Richmond County, I believe also Burke County. And some of the stories were just, it was emotional. It was just to hear people talk about losing access to healthy produce. We're talking Kroger, we're talking IGA, and then some of the other resources such as Sprouts, such as Publix. I don't think there's a Whole Foods here, but those type of fresh food access, they can't get to it. The closest grocery store right now to literally our location right now that they could get access to and feel comfortable with is the Kroger off of Washington Road. That's still a drive for a lot of people. And so that's what the problem is. So when we did those focus groups, that's what we've highlighted thus far. So moving it forward with the Paceline grant, we're going to continue with those conversations because the funds, they were generous with those funds with us, and we appreciate that from Paceline, that we'll be able to continue those conversations with the community this semester as well as next year. But then also so it's a 2-part study. The first part is to look at the association between food deserts, food swamps, and 3 different types of obesity-related cancers in the Augusta area, and specifically with patients at the Georgia Cancer Center.
Okay.
And then we'll get to detail on that in a minute. And then the second part is to doing a community needs assessment with an advisory board comprised of community members within the Augusta area to, again, and also with the funds I received from Paceline, to maybe be able to build a couple of gardens here and look at the feasibility and acceptability of and some behavior changes of that maintenance of small community-based gardens.
Wow. So
it's a mouthful. I get it.
No.
Yeah.
This is exciting, man. So all
Right.
you listeners, if you're tuned in right now, this work is phenomenal. Dr. Bevel is working on how do we mitigate some of these disparities in relation to food deserts and food swamps and multiple cancer outcomes. So if you're viewing the show, go ahead and look at that QR code. Please scan it, click it, and go to our Paceline.org. And please feel free to contribute to the cause, because this is funding great work like this that goes directly to the community, the community here that needs it. So again, we're going to get more in detail to some of the specifics of your research, and we want to show some data. We're gonna make sure that we explain it more in detail, and we're gonna make sure it's in lay terms so that we all understand it. But we also want to take a little bit of an opportunity to get a little bit more information about Paceline. We have our founder here, so if you could you go ahead and explain to us in your day-to-day life? Just tell us a little bit about your work as president and CEO of Eden Innovations. Just go ahead and share a little bit about yourself.
Sure, happy to do that. One thing I'd like to add to what Malcolm just shared, and really, if people look at Paceline and they think of Paceline as an event, it absolutely is. I mean, we call that day Pace Day. We have our big ride, but that is not all that Paceline is. Paceline is a movement. It's a transformation of your life. It's about staying physically fit. It's about engaging with the community. And look at how this grant that Dr. Bevel's working on ties directly into now, as you said, potentially some community-based gardens, which then are going to grow outstanding food to keep people healthy, which creates this giant loop that we're looking for, right? That's the movement that we're talking about. Showing up one Saturday night for a party and a Sunday ride in October is not what Paceline's about. So that's what we're most excited about. You asked about what I do day to day. Eden Innovations is a fantastic company. I've been blessed to be president CEO since the fall of 2019. We are, I guess the elevator speech would be, we're a green energy company. Okay. We have 2 very different product lines that come back to the same solution, and that's sustainability for infrastructure. So we have a liquid admixture. I like the easiest way to tell you is think of concrete like coffee. Okay. We're that splash of creamer that makes it awesome. Okay. So we're going to take concrete, we're going to make it more durable. And durability is sustainability, so it's going to last longer. You're going to less work to go back to and do maintenance and all that, which causes other greenhouse gas emissions. We can do certain things like reduce the amount of cement that goes into a yard of concrete, which that is a huge impact to greenhouse gases. And we can also, based on the impact that our material has to some mixed designs, instead of having to engineer a 10-inch pour, we can do an 8-inch pour. Well, you shave off 2 inches of material over hundreds of thousands of square feet. That is a massive impact to sustainability. Nice. The alternate thing we do is on diesel generators. We have a special kit that you just bolt on the side of it. You hook a natural gas line to it. It burns both fuels simultaneously, so it displaces the diesel. So the diesel feed is less because it's also burning the natural gas. So let's say I'm around the hospitals, right? For example, diesel generator backup power. You lose power, you get a tank that's going to last for 2 days. Running at full power, we'll make it last for 4 days, right? Because we use less diesel. So while that's burning, less particulates, less everything. I can get a little sideways and go, and I love what I do. I love talking about it, but I mean, we're here for the Paceline podcast, but that's where I focus my energy. I've got a wonderful team of people. Our office is in the southwest corner of Denver, Colorado, in Littleton. We own property here. We're looking to, when we expand due to demand and build our bigger facility, that's why I'm in Augusta. There's so many, different ways that that what I do corporately also ties into Paceline from an engagement perspective. So, that's what I'm doing day to day when I'm not worried about finding ways to grow Paceline.
No, Dag, I love it. I feel like we have a theme so far in regards to I feel very privileged to be in the presence of you guys, because I'm talking to two powerful men that a lot of your work focuses on sustainability and the future for our youth and how we creating a better environment, right? To where we have longer, healthier lives, and our carbon footprint, right, is not as poor. Right, we're trying to change lives, and I love it. I love it. I feel like it's all correlated. If you're in public health, you know that this is correlated to what we do. So it's really good, really good work. So we want to go ahead and pivot again back to this research that you're doing. And you mentioned a few words there. All right, we got to break it down for the people.
Oh, we do.
Okay. You mentioned food swamps. Okay. Right. So we actually have a map. From the Food Environmental Atlas?
Yes, Food Environment Atlas, and another one of the atlases from the USDA.
All right, so if you can just take a moment, right, to just break down. We've heard about food deserts. Right. Many people have heard about food deserts. Dag, have you heard about food deserts before?
Absolutely.
It's basically living in a neighborhood where you don't have grocery stores around, right? Could you go ahead and break down to us, Dr. Bevel, what is a food swamp?
Okay, so we'll start with the definition of food desert, because there is a literal definition and there is a more comprehensive definition. So typically a food desert is where it's a geographical area where you live more than 1 mile from a grocery store in an urban area or more than 10 miles in a rural area.
Dr. Bevel. David, if you can pull up that map with the map of the food desert, I think it's like a food environmental atlas.
It's a food environmental atlas.
So you can see it. Yeah.
So it's an atlas. It's an interactive atlas that is publicly available to everybody. So those who are listening, you can actually go to the website right now. You can basically Google USDA Food Environment Atlas, and it should take you directly to the website. And it's an atlas where you could see basically areas on a particular level in the United States that show how many people live in these particular areas. So again, food desert is if you live more than 1 mile from a grocery store in an urban area, more than 10 miles in a rural area. A more comprehensive definition is also dealing with low income and low access persons. Low income, basically people that are dealing with poverty based on the federal poverty line. So using that in conjunction, that gives a better comprehensive story as to people that don't have access to grocery stores, not only from literally where you live, but also the fact that you don't have much money to be able to buy these products. So we see the map here. Well,
this is obesity, but I'll explain this one. It's related.
It is related.
This is definitely related.
There's a correlation with this, and people will be able to see this momentarily. So that's the definition of food desert. Food swamp, the only difference between a food desert and a food swamp is actually what type of food there is. We're talking about hyperinflammatory, pro-inflammatory, unhealthy foods. So we're talking about the fast food restaurants. We know people have their favorites out there, so sorry, y'all, but we got to tell the truth. We're talking about the Wendy's, the McDonald's, the Popeyes chicken, the Bojangles. Because of the way that the food is prepared, it is hyperinflammatory. It is not as healthy versus your whole food produce. We also have convenience stores that go into the definition of food swamps. So the corner store, like people like to say, the corner stores where they sell hot Cheetos and hot pickles and other healthy foods such as fried chicken as opposed to like a baked or a grilled chicken. And then you also have, and specifically to here in Augusta, and like again, some of the work that we did with the focus groups, not that much access when it comes to other types of convenience stores or smaller stores like your Dollar General and your Family Dollar type of stores that are here. So again, what type of foods that are served also helps define and a more novel approach to defining food swamps. So we have food deserts where you literally have no food, and you have food swamps where you have more access to unhealthy foods relative to the grocery stores.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Now you have some preliminary data for us as well, which allows us to tie the map that we see here
Yes.
with food deserts and food swamps.
Yes.
So just really quickly, what we're looking at on the screen here, we have a recent publication by Mills et al. This is taken from a study that looked at the use of small area estimates to describe county-level geographic variation in the prevalence of extreme obesity among U.S. adults. So what we're looking at, as you can see, we have this this gradient map, right, that goes from light to dark. Right, it goes from light yellow to like a dark red, and the areas that have the dark red are those that are within the highest quintile. All right, for extreme obesity. Now they describe or defined extreme obesity as a BMI greater than 40. Right. So if you all are familiar, BMI is looking at what is it? The
height and the weight.
Yes. The kilograms per meter squared. Right. So again, if you have a BMI that's greater than 40, and they're looking at all of this at the county level, right? So what we're able to see in this image here, specifically the southeastern United States, has the highest distribution at a geographic level of extreme obesity, right? So the adults that are living, and you can see here in the southern Mississippi River area, which is, what is that? Lower the Boot Hill of Missouri, going all the way down through Arkansas, going all the way to Louisiana, and then you have Mississippi through Alabama, and then through Georgia. We actually see they're not as dark red, but they're still within that fourth quintile, which would put it in 80th percentile and higher. And then if you look at where we are, in Richmond County, Georgia, right here in Augusta, it's very small over there on that border where we're near South Carolina. It is dark red, which means that we are in the top quintile for extreme adult obesity. Okay?
And last I checked, Augusta is the second largest city, or one of the largest cities in the state.
It should be the third, right? Because I think it's Atlanta for a metropolitan area, and then we have, Columbus? And then Augusta is the third largest metropolitan area.
But think about that. Third largest area, which you would assume that you would have access to fresh produce. You would assume that a little bit more walkability, so the ability for people to play outside or walk outside, just even take a simple walk according to the CDC recommendations. Third highest city, second or third highest city in the state of Georgia. It's in the red.
Yes. David, if you can go to the next image, which it should be very similar to this one. It talks about moderate obesity. And this is basically defined as a BMI from 30 to 40. All right. And we see some of the same trends, the same areas that are disproportionately affected by obesity. So this is really interesting because you've just done or performed a preliminary analysis that has tried to link these food swamps that you were just telling us about. So these areas of having a high density, basically, of hyperinflammatory foods with no fresh produce in grocery stores near them being correlated to obesity-related cancers.
Correct.
One more map, David, before we get to these results, okay? One more map. We have another map that shows, and this is something that we actually provided evidence from the Georgia Cancer Center that looks at colorectal cancer hotspots in Georgia. Could we pull that one up? So as you can see from this figure here, this is using data over a 20-year period, y'all, from the CDC that's looking at mortality, right? So this is death attributed to colorectal cancer. Now, I don't know if you all know this, but colorectal cancer is an obesity-related cancer. And this is 2022. We have very, very, very good screening. We have very, very good therapy and surgical procedures that can help mitigate some of the mortality that we see attributed to colorectal cancer. Okay. However, we do see that there are areas within Georgia that are disproportionately affected by colorectal cancer mortality. What we did in this analysis, we wanted to see what were the hot spots. So what were the areas that were disproportionately or elevated colorectal cancer mortality? Okay. And as you can see from this image here, our area, the Georgia Cancer Center, our catchment area is all that red that you see over there in that right corner of Georgia, right? So we see Burke County, which is predominantly African American, highlights as a hot spot. Just to kind of make it easier to understand, these hot spots were within the top 10% of colorectal cancer mortality for the state of Georgia, right? So we're looking at Burke. I can't see some of the other counties, but Richmond County is right there beside it, okay? So with that being said, you've done some preliminary work where you've linked these food swamps, food deserts with colorectal cancer as one of the obesity-related cancer mortality. And what were some of the findings? What did you see?
So to start, what we'll focus on is that there are 13 different types of obesity-related cancers, including breast and colorectal, and they account for about 40% of all cancers in the United States. And this is a problem considering that obesity in of itself is an epidemic in this country. And so we also know that healthy food consumption is a modifiable factor that can reduce obesity and obesity-related cancers. But yet we have those barriers that we've been talking about all day, food deserts and food swamps, that may keep us from being able to combat obesity-related cancers. So what we did, as you were a part of the research and the preliminary results, as well as other members of our team at CPCPH, is we linked the USDA data with CDC cancer mortality data, specifically the obesity-related cancer mortality data. So the 13 types of obesity-related cancers, including breast, colorectal, as you see the hotspots here. And what we found was and after we defined food swamps, we used a continuous variable, which was the ratio of, I believe what we did is the ratio of fast food and convenience stores. So that was our numerator, or the top, to grocery stores and farmers markets. Gave us a more comprehensive data in terms of what we believe is access that the people have nationwide. And when we did that ratio, that's how we defined food swamps. There was already a food desert variable that was already defined. And then we looked at cancer mortality rates. We defined that as high, or basically 71.8 per 100,000, versus low, so less than 71.8. And the long and the short is, what we found is that if you reside in counties in the United States that have poor or the highest level of food swamp scores, or basically poor food swamp environments, you have a 77% increased odds of dying from any of the 13 obesity-related obesity-related cancers.
Say that one more time. So if you live in a food swamp, just based on where you live, you have you almost have a twofold increase odds or chance of dying from one of 13 obesity-related cancers in America. That's within the last 10 years. Wow. So this isn't just 1 year of data. And this is for the entire United States?
Over 3,000 counties. We removed some of the counties that had missing data, so to have a more comprehensive and a better data set. But there's about 3,143 counties in the United States. We use 3,041. So the vast majority of the counties in the United States, and this is what we found. Wow. This has never been done before.
Wow. I mean, like, what? So I guess the next question is, what do we do about this? You know, like we take this data and we see these correlations, and we see that, okay, if you live in these areas that are disproportionately affected by food swamps and food deserts, they're related to these negative outcomes. How does the work that you do, how does the work that we do with Paceline, what can we do about this issue? What are the next steps?
So some of the next steps that we propose, basically not just discussions, but also action items. We could talk to local and state policymakers about making a concerted effort to provide healthier food options, such as retaining grocery stores, not having grocery stores move out so quickly from areas, especially underserved areas, such as the African American community, the Latinx community. We can, again, gardening, kind of getting back to the roots of things.
So let's get into that with the study that you're doing with the focus groups and community gardening, and like, let's talk about that.
So a lot of the community gardens and some of the research that I did prior to coming to the Georgia Cancer Center, a lot of the community gardens that exist in the United States are mainly either on the West Coast or up in the New York, Pennsylvania area. So the Patriot Northeast is what it's designated as. But there aren't that many community gardens in the Southeast. We need to change that. This region, especially even in the state of Georgia, has longer growing seasons. The soil content can be reconstituted. There can also be imported soil to have the maximum and the best type of soil to be able to grow different types of produce. You talk about different types of greens, not just collards and turnips, but kale. things that people talk about. You could start growing sweet potatoes, different types of yams, cucumbers, melons, different types of fruits, vine fruits that you can grow. And the way to do that is building greenhouse-based community gardens, specifically in these areas, allowing the community to have a hand in what they grow, how they grow it, so then they can eat it. Also, we could teach them cooking techniques as well. There are a lot of things that are going on in the area, and some of the things that we're collaborating with within local organizations such as Paceline in terms of bringing these resources to the people. And that's what CBPR is all about. Again, bringing it to the people because they need it. And they're asking for it.
Yeah. So right here in Richmond County, we're in a food swamp.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Where the Georgia Cancer Center is, we're in a food swamp. Now, think about that. State-of-the-art facility, all the resources that we have, Walton Way, Laney Walker Boulevard, there's no grocery store. But I can count 2 gas stations off the top of my head. Walton Way has, and we've been up and down Walton Way before in some of the recruitment that we've done locally. There's multiple restaurants, fast food restaurants up Walton Way. And who resides there is the bigger question. And the people know. They've been talking about it. It's primarily African Americans, primarily people with lower socioeconomic status people, which is everybody. This affects everybody. So this is near and dear to my heart, and this is something we got to combat.
There's a lot of good information here. I want to take a moment to really try to break down how do we go from the food swamps, right? So what is that mechanism that drives the consumption of these hyperinflammatory foods and their relationship to obesity-related cancers?
There's multiple facets to that. One that I like to point out is also advertising.
Okay.
Some of the research that I did, especially with my dissertation at USC, included looking at the fact that there is an intentional movement to advertise certain types of foods to certain types of communities. There are products, and we talk about this with other types of products, tobacco. What are the movements in terms of tobacco? We had what is that? The movement the movement for tobacco cessation, like some of the national ones and those national organizations.
Okay, yeah.
Basically, they were talking about how in communities of color they advertise cigarettes more often and cigarette use more often in African American communities compared to more affluent or white communities. They also spoke to product placement. Even when we see in the grocery stores, you see more advertisements in the grocery stores for your sodas. We all love sodas, and everybody knows I'm gonna clown myself real quick. I'm a Dr. Pepper junkie. Need to get off of it, but that's my go-to. If I have a soda, it's Dr. Pepper. But the product placement with that, they'll advertise Dr. Pepper and how cheap it is versus a smoothie, versus the fruits that you can make to have a smoothie. Juice. They'll put those signs up at the front of the store. That's the first thing that you see when you're walking into a grocery store. People also don't know, and a large part of it is about education. Some of the training that I received at USC with the Sisters Trial included how people can navigate a grocery store. So people can notice when it comes to grocery stores, such as a Kroger or Supercenter, such as Walmart or even Whole Foods, all the fresh produce and all the other fresh products, milk, cheese, meats, and then the vegetables are on the outside periphery of the stores.
Wow.
But all the unhealthy products, the canned products full with sodium and all those other not so healthy things are right there in your face when you walk into the store in the aisles. People don't recognize that. We could talk about nutrition labeling and understanding those serving sizes. All of this goes in, is intertwined with how the environment is, not just in Georgia, not just in Augusta, Georgia, but in America.
Wow. So essentially, Dr. Bevel, what you're saying is that we have, again, these social determinants of health. So we have these environmental issues and factors, right? How things are labeled, how things are advertised within someone's community, the absence of fresh produce, right? How they are related to the actual actions and the choices that people get to make on the individual level, which in turn creates habits, which create culture, which create norms, right? So if you're consuming certain diets that are high in fats, that are high in sodium, that again high in sugar, which causes this chronic hyperinflammatory state, which induces, right, cancer, because if you have this inflammation, right, what that's doing is it's calling your cells to be abnormal, and then that in turn causes development of cancer.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
Right. So we go from the environmental to the interpersonal to how it manifests in the
individual
cells. So all of this is connected. I have a great idol or mentor in cancer research, Dr. Robert Wynn. He has this term that's called the genome. The genome.
Yep.
Have you?
I've briefly heard of it.
The genome. So that's spelled ZENOME. Genome, as in zip code affecting your genome or your genetics, right? So where you live, not essentially because of just the location, but based on the infrastructure, the environment and conditions of where you live, right? Where you live, work, and play. These influence you on a molecular level.
Absolutely.
Right. So I want to again, we want this to be a conversation,
right.
Dag. So in terms of how does the work that we do with Paceline, this is what it's all about, right? Because we're supporting this. And if you want to go ahead and add.
So think about this for a second. So, we've stood up in front of people for the past really 4 years because we had the lead up to year one.
Right, of course.
And we've talked about what is the purpose of Paceline, is to fundraise for the Georgia Cancer Center. And then one of our great taglines is, together we can cure cancer faster. So we talk about the cure, we talk about the fight. We had folks on staff, I don't really like the word fight, right? It sounds like if you lost, does that, if you succumb to your cancer, does that mean you didn't fight hard enough? And so we've talked about different things like that, but I think one of the things that's really jumping out at me from our conversation today is everything you're doing is about preventing cancer.
Absolutely.
It's not just about the cure, right?
Right.
It's we wear, I guess, in a very simple thing, we wear seatbelts because when that accident occurs, we want that protection. So let's eat healthier when we can. Help with that prevention. Let's prevent it from being worse than it possibly could be. Well, that's easy, right? Justin, you just need to eat healthier. Well, it sure would be nice if where you lived, you had access to those healthy foods, right? And that's exactly why Paceline loves the engagement we have with Dr. Bevel. It's the full picture. It's not just about an event. It's not just about where do I point the energy for the therapy, for where do I inject the drugs, for the chemotherapy. No. This is also prevention, and that's a big part of what Paceline's doing. And what's great is so many people react to different things. I've got people that participate in Paceline because awesome, I get to ride a bike for a purpose. I get healthier. Personally get healthier. Well, you're also raising money to fight cancer. Other people, I really want to, I was touched by cancer in a very negative way. I'm going to do what I can do, because that's a lot of the reaction we get is somebody gets diagnosed with cancer that you care about, and the first question they ask is, what can I do? I'll tell you what you can do. Come volunteer for Paceline. Yeah. Help us raise more money for the GCC. Come ride in Paceline. Come fundraise. But guess what's happening at the same time? You're achieving the personal benefit of physical fitness, right? So all these things begin to add up. It's the small steps that get us to the journey, not trying to do it all at one time.
No, and Dag, I want to touch on a point that you just made there, because you all did something brilliant with what Paceline actually includes in the big day, the PACE day, right? Physical activity. Increasing physical activity is associated with reduction of cancer morbidity and mortality.
Absolutely.
So the activity itself is conducive of cancer prevention and control. So this is a big deal. I want to go ahead and pivot to a question that we actually have from online.
Okay.
And this actually may be geared toward both of you all, but you can answer this, Dr. Bevel.
Okay.
So we have a question here from Mr. James Holmes. Short of having people outside of fast food restaurants and in the aisles of unhealthy canned goods, how are we making consumers aware of these risks that are involved?
How are we making them aware?
Aware, yeah.
This type of research, for starters, getting out in the media. There needs to be a more concerted effort with having us have these discussions with local news, the policymakers, basically telling them that this is what's going on. And this is why I do the research that I do. I don't do it for whatever reason. There is a purpose behind this, and the purpose is to tell them. People like to say, well, show us the facts, show us the evidence. We just did a preliminary analysis within the last month about what's going on. We call it the new epidemic. Food swamps are the new epidemic in this country. And so we're going to take this. We're going to present this at different conferences, such as APHA. Hopefully we can get it accepted. We're going to talk to the local policymakers and tell them that this is a problem. This is contributing to it. And we'll have to tell them the hard truths. For example, one of the other contributing factors and barriers, redlining. Redlining is the intentional effort to shift resources out, block people off from these type of resources. That's basically the layman's definition. And a part of that are fresh produce. So like you said, it's simple to just tell somebody, hey, go eat an apple. Apple a day keeps the doctor away, right?
Eat healthier.
Eat healthier.
Yes.
But if you literally don't have the grocery stores to eat healthy, or if you have certain other type of stores where the shelf life of the produce is literally 2 days, you're not going to choose that. And going back to what you were saying about that type of behavior and how that contributes basically down the line to your cells, when people have to make choices between, am I going to get my medicine or am I going to get food? Am I going to be able to get groceries? Am I going to be able to pay my bills? All of this is intertwined in terms of the health of the people and underserved persons in this country. We got to talk. We have to keep having these podcasts, and we have to get the right people in front of the right people and people that care to be able to combat this, because that's the only way we're going to be able to do it.
Yes. So, Dag, I want to get a non-scientific or non-epidemiological perspective of what do our communities know about how food deserts and food swamps may be related to obesity and obesity-related cancers, like among our family members and among those who are even participants within Paceline. What are you getting the consensus of, or what do people really know about this issue, if at all?
That's a great question. I mean, with the experience I have with my, whether it's people I work with, my friends, even my two boys. I mean, the interesting thing is, a lot of it is speed and efficiency driven. Well, I've only got 45 minutes to, because it's going to take me 7.5 minutes to drive and 7.5 minutes to drive back. I got to get something fast. And there's great restaurants out there that fill that need. There are healthy choice restaurants.
Of course, yep.
But you have to be careful also, because there's some ingredients in there that can be tough. And so I think people are aware, but I think sometimes they're aware that there's a food desert there, but they can't overcome it, right? How do we provide the solutions to overcome it? And that's not Paceline's role. That's why we provide the funding that we provide, so that the experts such as Malcolm can go help us figure that out. And then we go to the policymakers, right? Everybody's involved. I would say, I don't know what it was early on. It definitely wasn't my personal food choices, but my boys very early on decided fast food is not for me, right? They figured out healthy choices, and they've done exceptionally well. And if we were driving down the highway, you want to go to McDonald's? What are you talking about? I'm not going to McDonald's, right? So we would solve it with a more healthy choice. That, I think, is the key word we're talking about. It doesn't matter if it's in your pantry at home or if it's down the street. Which restaurant you go into? What do I pull off the shelf? If you don't have choices that offer some healthy alternative, then you really don't have a choice. I mean, you've got to take care of yourself. It goes back to what you just said earlier, as well as the financial impact, the cost of some of these various things as well. It's not an easy solution. But if we can identify the challenge, which I think what I'm seeing that you're doing with all your great work, then we can begin to offer solutions. Yep. And that's what I think is super critical.
Now, just to add a little bit more context to that, first of all, I want to thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you.
So the wonderful Dag Grantham had served in our military for how many years? Could you give us a little background on that? I think that in itself, when you were talking about norms, right? There are certain norms and practices that you kind of normalize, essentially, by being in the military, right? And that may have influenced your children and some of the decisions that they make. Could you give us a little background of the time that you spent in the military and how that carried over into your philanthropy? And yeah, like so how does that relate to some of the work that you do today?
Sure. I really enjoyed my service career. I was in the U.S. Air Force, all told, for 20 years through a combination of active duty Air Force, U.S. Air Force Reserves, and even the Air National Guard. That's me. Yeah.
Wow.
In fact, that was my last flight in the F-16. That was from February of 2013, and I retired that year in June. And
is this Top Gun in the studio?
I feel like, yeah, I'm pretty sure.
We're gonna hand that title to the Navy. Those Navy folks get to be Top Gun. But yeah, that was a fantastic day. It was a wonderful career. I saw a lot of very interesting things in the military, and I saw things that I didn't anticipate. Out of 2,200 hours in the F-16, I've got about roughly 200 and change in combat. Mm-hmm. And in my last stint in combat was in 2008. I was over in Iraq with the Montana Air National Guard, a bunch of great guys and gals, and we had a wonderful deployment over there. And one of the most interesting things was, everybody thinks it's all about, and it is. It's where's the next threat? How do we combat the next threat? And it's still different than the medical world, right? What's the next threat? How do we prevent it? How do we cure it? Right, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. Same type of thing in the military. But at the same time, you know what those folks want that live in that country? They want the same thing we do for the most part, right? They want to know that they can take care of their families. They want to know that their children have opportunities to be greater than what their parents were. Okay, and they've got their lives they want to live. I mean, there's bad actors everywhere. It doesn't matter where you go. And I think one of the things that I was most impressed by was that when I would fly my night missions, and even without the night vision goggles, just the natural lights of the cities, you could see more every night. Wow. More electrical grids were being put in. More power stations were being built. You go a week, there'd be a whole nother neighborhood that was lit up at night, and just that infrastructure being rebuilt. And so taking that idea into the, I guess you will, the following chapters of my life is how can you give back and have more of an impact? Having somebody string cable between point A and point B, that's their job, but the impact of the existence of that cable and the power that it delivers and what it can offer the folks at point B is amazing. So how can you give back? And I saw Paceline as a strong way of being able to do that.
Thank you, Dag.
Very nice.
And that's a great segue into what I want to make another comment on. Please go to Paceline.org. Please make a contribution and how you can give back. We are trying to save lives. This year alone, over 600,000 people are expected to die from cancer. 600,000, with the vast majority of them actually being preventable. We have a lot of therapeutics and treatments that can help elongate and increase survival. However, a lot of people do not have access or do not even have the information. A lot of the work that we do with Paceline, and as you can see with the brilliant work that Dr. Bevel is doing here, is in cancer prevention and control. And the funds that we raise through Paceline, 100% of them are used for this work. So please visit Paceline.org. And if you're online, go ahead and scan that QR code and donate.
Can I just ring the bell on that again?
Yes.
100% of the funds you raise. That's pretty amazing. And we do that through the partnerships we have with our funding partners. So different nonprofit organizations exist under different means. Sometimes they have to take 20 cents, 15 cents, 30 cents off the dollar that they raise to operate, which is their business model, and they do wonderful things. At Paceline, we take zero off of the fundraise, so that 100% goes directly to cancer research, and now I'll say prevention. How's that?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Wow. So again, I want to give a shout out. I want to give a shout out to our top fundraisers for 2022 to date. All right. So number one, we have Team Go GCC. That's Go Georgia Cancer Center. Hey. We have Classic City which is an Athens team. I want y'all to realize that Paceline is just not a local CSRA, Central Savannah River area, or Augusta event or a fundraising event. This is global. You can participate if you're anywhere. Yep. Please come. Please contribute. Number 3 is One Vogel. Number 4 is Greensboro National Bank and Trust. And I want to make a correction from for last year's top fundraisers. So for 2021, the teams in order: number 1 are Ivy Homes, number 2, Go GCC, number 3, Queensboro, number 4, KMO, number 5, Cranston, and number 6, HNTB. Let's go ahead and get into some of our final questions because we're winding down on time here.
Okay.
And in terms of next steps, Dr. Bevel, what are the next steps for your research? And you kind of alluded to this. How does the funds and the contributions for Paceline help with those next steps?
Perfect. So some of my next steps include continuing to do the work we're doing, like the preliminary data that we're doing about the association between food deserts, food swamps, and obesity-related cancers. We can continue in doing that work with specific cancer types to basically tease out and what's actually driving the 77% increased odds or chance of dying from these type of cancers if you reside in these areas. Continuing to do that work, getting that information out to peer-reviewed journals so then people can know, because alluding to the question that we received, people need to know. And so a way that we allow people to know is showing them the results in a journal that they can go get access to. And if you find us at the GCC, we'll be able to even just print off those articles because we want you to understand how severe this problem is. We will also continue to work. So at the conclusion of the Paceline Award, we will compile that data, again, continue to get it out there to the people, whether it be conferences or whether it be publications. But then this will lay the foundation for other larger grants. This was a great size grant, and I'm very appreciative of it, and I'm thankful and blessed to have received this award. But there are more monies out there, federally funded dollars, that can build the gardens necessary to get the produce to the people that are literally, practically begging for it. They need this. And when you do qualitative data analysis and quantitative data analysis simultaneously, it's the best way to tell the people what's going on, and it's the best way to inform the policymakers, this is what we need. So that it isn't just the federal dollars, but then now we can, talk about other funding sources such as Paceline, such as other nonprofit organizations or even for-profit organizations in true partnership that is mutually beneficial to everybody involved in the community.
And Dr. Bevel, I want to interject really, really quickly here because you're being really humble. You're doing research that simultaneously figures out what the people need, what they want through your qualitative analysis. So you're actually getting valuable contextual evidence from the population.
Context is very important.
Right?
Yep.
And then, again, like I said, you're being humble because your big goals and dreams are to create these large community gardens.
I want to build large community gardens throughout Georgia and throughout the southeastern United States and everywhere. So because as we saw on that map, the obesity map, for example, it wasn't even just the Southeast. We're talking Iowa. We're talking even some of the Midwestern states that were in the red in terms of morbid obesity. This needs to be everywhere. Everybody's got to eat, right? Everybody's got to eat. You have to eat to live. You got to eat good things to live. And you got to eat healthy. I want to create greenhouse-based community gardens throughout the Southeast because everybody's got to eat year-round. Yes, we have longer growing seasons. I believe Georgia's about 11 and a half months. But people have to eat literally year-round.
So you're about that work. You're not just doing that research and then putting it out there. You're trying to do the work as well.
Absolutely.
It's brilliant.
Partnering with other organizations such as the Ebony Tree Council. They've been a pivotal part in terms of the work I've been doing since I got here. So we're here. We're here and we're willing to do the work. And so we hope that we can continue to build partnerships.
So happy to have you here.
Glad to
at
be
the Georgia
here.
Cancer Center. We have a rising star here. Thank you, Dr. Bevel.
Thank you.
Dag, if you can please, if you can just share, how can people be involved with Paceline? Where can they follow along to register? How can they find out how to ride? How can they get engaged with Paceline?
So the easiest way is to go directly to our website, paceline.org. You can also follow us on social media at Paceline Ride, which is the way to follow us that way. I think the most critical thing to understand is we need everybody. It's not about just getting on a bicycle and riding. And by the way, if you can ride a bicycle, you can participate in Paceline. You don't have to have the spandex. You don't have to have the $2,000 bike. You just need a bicycle and the ability to ride it. That's it. I mean, we're going to have a certain, obviously, safety functions. Everybody's going to have a helmet and some other pieces like that. But we also need volunteers.
Yes.
One of the things that I was proudest about Paceline year one, and we've heard this message echoed again over the multiple events, was somebody said, I've been riding in events in Georgia and the Southeast for 20 years, and this is one of the grandest events I've ever ridden in. And it was the first year. And the way we do that is our rest stops are stocked with volunteers.
Wow.
We've got medical volunteers. We've got people managing food tables, all the food and drink you need to keep you energized for the ride. We've got restrooms. We've got bike mechanic volunteers that are helping people repair their bikes. And we have law enforcement at every single intersection for the entire route. So 100 miles, that's a lot of intersections. And we've got law enforcement covering those intersections. That's a critical piece. It gives people that sense of safety. They can enjoy it. So we need volunteers to man those stops. We need volunteers to drive our support vehicles that kind of bounce around the course and help people out when they have problems. Volunteers at the event when we host everybody for the opening night ceremony, for the finish line events the next day. We've got things we're handing out, registering bikes, putting bikes into storage, having, we've got showers, restrooms, everything else. That we got to make sure if it's all good to go. And we also have so you can also obviously be a rider. Let's go raise funds that way. If you are so driven to ride, but you not really good about getting on the bicycle, that's okay. We got virtual riders as well. There's so many ways to participate.
So we're covering everything.
Yeah, we're covering everything.
Now, how old can you be?
I think we've got a younger age group this year, 10 years old, on our 1 mile loop that we're going to have around downtown. So we also, in that loop, you don't have to just be young to do that. If you want to ride the longer routes, 14, I believe is the age you have to be to get outside of the downtown area. You don't have to be a younger to ride the 1 mile route. If you have I'm not sure if this is safe. I kind of want to experience it, but I'm not really sure. Come ride the laps around downtown with us. I mean, you couldn't be closer to the party, right? You're going to be right there where everything's going to end up. So again, 10 years old, you've between 10 and 14, you've got to stay at that inner little loop downtown. 14 and older, you can ride the much longer routes with the family, or just come out and be the only one from your family riding. Come on out and raise money. We've got plenty of coverage for you.
Thank you. So Paceline, this is a family affair. Anyone can be involved. It's a community affair. Right? This is a global affair. We want everybody involved in trying to end cancer. Okay. As we're winding down, I just want to take one final comment from our guest here, Dr. Bevel. Any final words?
Again, I'm thankful and blessed to have this opportunity to be with the Georgia Cancer Center and working with Paceline to prevent cancer through change in terms of behavior and the environment.
Yes, sir.
We're going to keep on working.
Let's do it. Dag, what do you got for me?
Quick final event. People look at Paceline.org and they think about signing up, and then they see, oh my goodness, if I want to ride distance X, I've got to raise so much money. And if I don't raise that money, I'm on the hook for it, right? And so it's not about signing up and we say, good luck, we'll see you in a few months at the ride, and we're happy to run your credit card. That's not how Paceline operates. We support you in your fundraising efforts. We support you in either joining a team, helping form a team. We give you wonderful ideas on fundraising opportunities. There's 1,001 ways to fundraise, right? Have a chili cook-off, a football grid for a football game, and the list goes on and on and on. And we want to make sure that people understand that for those people who are absolutely driven, I'm just driven to participate. I want to raise money, but I'm not even sure I can cover the fee to register. This year, we created a special program that we're going to have a limited number of people, but I've donated some money to Paceline in honor of Ian Mercier, who is the president of the Medical College of Georgia Foundation. Without his vision and support, Paceline wouldn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to keep a lookout for that program as well. But again, when you sign up, it's just the beginning of our relationship. It's not good luck. We'll see you at event day.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in. This has been the Paceline Podcast, and I am your own personal epidemiologist and host, Dr. Justin Xavier Moore. You all have a good one.